Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Alliance Designs and Laconico EZE 2.0. This is the officially released version. I was very confused by this knife to begin with. I knew I wanted to pick it up. I did buy this directly from Alliance Designs, and I think they're still available. I will try and link them down in the description so that you guys can check it out too. There's a bunch of different versions. They are expensive for sure. We'll talk all about it. But I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want one of those, right? This is the evolution to the one that I reviewed, right? No. It turns out I went back and looked at my video. I was reviewing the prototype about a year ago. That was sent to me by Tri-State. So I was looking at it thinking, what did they change from version 1 to version 2? Version 1 is a sandwich construction titanium frame lock. I believe that's the base version, and is not an integral. Version 2, the prototype that I handled and reviewed, was an integral. And then this is the one of the officially released versions of it. So I've actually been carrying this knife for about 7 days straight, and I love carrying this knife. This is one of those weird situations where this knife has a lot of weird design choices. They go perfectly in line with what we expect to see from Laconico, but it's just kind of awkward. But the cool factor of it, man, I will go out of my way. I will inconvenience myself with certain little teeny tiny design choices when the cool factor is high enough. And this is a perfect example of that. I am a huge fan of carrying this, but some of you might not be, and I want to explain why. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. I feel like my thoughts will be relatively the same as with the prototype, but I just want to sort of update, for those of you considering buying this, and considering I've been carrying it, if you want to hear my thoughts, I want to update that. The overall length of this guy is coming in at 7.5 inches on the dot. Blade length is 3.25 on the dot. Cutting edge is 3 inches on the dot. Though I will say the heft and just presence of this knife, if you're thinking, I like it to be 8 inches at least, 7.5 seems kind of small. This knife carries and feels, it doesn't carry a lot. It feels like a larger knife. It feels very robust in a good way, not in a cumbersome way, but it just has a full-size knife presence, and a lot of that is due to, the fact that the frame is one solid piece of titanium. If you're new to knives, and you're looking at the prices, and you're like, I thought, titanium and, these super steels, like I see those for like $200 or so, like why is this one so much more? It's because, no matter what, this is just factually true. Taking a block of titanium and then milling the frame and lock out of it is factually more expensive than doing 2 pieces of titanium. Do you gain any sort of utilitarian benefit? Not much. Not much. An argument could maybe kind of be made for durability, but mostly it's ease of maintenance, and really, if we're being honest with ourselves, it's cool factor. But regardless of your feelings on that, it factually costs more money to do, right? So you can value it or not value it, but if you're wondering why is this so much more expensive, are they trying to rip our faces off? Are they trying to, take advantage of an unknowing consumer base? No, it's because integrals cost more money to do. In fact, this is one of the best priced integrals that I've ever seen hit the market, the base version of this. We'll talk more about that, but just to get that out of the way, because I know a lot of you got to get back to your YouTube shorts scrolling. You don't have the attention span for a 20-minute review, right? But let's go ahead and do size comparisons. I think that's probably what we do next, right? Isn't it? How about up against the AD10 and the AD20.5? Any custom scales you see in this section can be found down in the description under original goat and others. So it's really very close to almost exactly the same size as the AD20.5. But it does feel quite a bit different. It doesn't really feel like the same size as the AD20.5, but it's the same length, right? Up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3. Yeah, obviously close to the size of the pair of 3. And then finally, let's put it up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and the, where is it? The Hogue Deca. Again, very similar in overall length to the Hogue Deca, but wow, does it feel like a different knife. How's the action? The action's very good. This is made by Riat, at least if it's the same as the prototype, which I assume that it is. It's made by Riat. Alliance Designs is, sometimes it depends on the build, but in the past they've actually had different OEMs make different parts of the knife. So I think, you know, the idea behind Alliance Designs is it's an alliance, or just basically just, you know, you got a designer and at least one OEM, which is the same as a lot of knives, but in some cases it's multiple OEMs. So sometimes it makes that really interesting. To my knowledge, it's just Ray Laconico and Riat, and then Alliance is the branding behind this culmination. So why couldn't Ray Laconico go directly through Riat? I don't know. Does he have a direct affiliation with Alliance Designs? Maybe. Maybe I just don't know. But just if you're wondering who Alliance Designs is, that's who it is. I'm not really sure that that matters, but what does matter is the name behind the design, and that's Ray Laconico. And once you see a Ray Laconico, you can spot him a million miles away. You can just see it. He's got the same, well, very similar design language with a lot of his stuff. But anyways, Riat produces a super high quality knife. Some of the best production work on Earth. Yes, they're made in China, and yes, I did say on Earth. That's just the case. It's really hard to beat, you know, companies like Riat when it comes to quality execution. So the action is very good, and it's very similar to other Ray Laconico knives, but with that Riat crispiness, right? Really nice. Now, the flipper tab is a little bit pokey. If you flip this over and over and over again, you're going to feel it. It's definitely much better as a light switcher, but some of us, you're like me, you can't help but push button it, and that's going to irritate your finger after a bit. The cutout and access to the lock bar is okay. They scalloped it on both sides, but one side is not cut lower than the other, so it's a little bit pinchy. The flipper tab meets your thumb at precisely the right moment for there not to be double clutch. But if you let it tilt backwards, you're going to have a bit of an issue. There's a piece of debris on the the detent ball. I can feel it. So there we go. Cleared it out. If that happens, by the way, I keep this. It's a good opportunity to showcase this. I keep this stuff in my on my Amazon store, like the link. If you go in the comments section, it says my Amazon store. It's like the tools and everything that I use on the channel. This stuff is in there, and if you ever get that grindy, scratchy feeling, it's not that there's anything wrong with your knife. 99.9% of the time, what it means is that a piece of debris has gotten on either on top of the detent ball, or much more likely, it's on the path of the detent ball on the blade face. So what we can do is take a single drop of well, we got it caught there. What we can do is take a single drop of 10 weight nano oil. You can use MyLink, or you can just find this stuff. And then let it run. This is the first time I've ever oiled it. Let it sort of work itself in to that ball path. And my goodness, does that clear up pretty much immediately. Wowzers. The action of the knife is good by itself. But I like to let things break in with no lubricant, and then once I feel like they've broken in, I will add a drop of 10 weight, and that usually does the trick. Outside of that, you can simply blow the knife out with compressed air to improve action, but it very rarely is something where it's a flaw with the designer. You need to send it back, right? A single tube of 10 weight. I can't remember how many years ago I bought this, but I've been on the same tube, right? So all you need is a single drop, and wow, that action is just phenomenal. Almost drop shut, actually, now that we've got the 10 weight in there. But that's not just the 10 weight, it's the tolerances of the knife. Riat does a good job of making sure that things break in a quality way without, sacrificing solidity and lockup geometry or anything like that. The action is very good, but it's a little bit quirky, a little bit awkward because of the access to the lock bar and the shape of the flipper tab. But it still manages to not have double clutch, which is nice. And honestly, the detent strength and the firing power, the satisfaction of the release of the blade is so good that any awkwardness that's there is really overshadowed by the complete package. This is really like kind of a sensory overload knife for me, because it has so many things that I just love so much. It makes it hard to be critical of what I normally say are design flaws. A lot of it, of course, that's very subjective, but what I would normally criticize a lot of stuff for. So I'm going to try and, again, be fair about this, because I'm a bit biased. I really like this one. Carry profile. We got to move faster. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. It's really not all that thick. It's a little bit, right? Maybe slightly thicker than the Para 3. This profile is what makes it so easy to carry. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. You're really carrying quite a bit of object, for how compact it is, I guess. Does that make sense? It's not super tall, not super long. It's actually, oh boy, it's the same. I think it's almost exactly the same overall length as the Spyderco Para 3, maybe just a hair longer. Weight. What are we looking at for materials? We're looking at L-Max, not M390. Oh no, L-Max. M390 is a higher quality steel, right? No, it's just the multi-directional teeter-totter, right? M390 just got a lot more limelight over the years, and of course, as we all know, edge retention over everything, right? So M390 better, right? No. That's preference. L-Max, just a different composition. Very good edge retention, very good stainless properties. Tougher than M390 and slightly easier to sharpen, given, if we're looking at the exact same geometry and the exact same hardness, which is almost never the case. So L-Max, in my opinion, is a more preferable steel. I think it's closer to S35VN or S45VN with better edge retention. So for me, I prefer it better. I'm not the biggest fan of M390, but had they done M390, S45VN, S35VN, L-Max, I don't really care. That's not what I am wanting to pay for with this. So as long as it's somewhere in that ballpark, I would have been fine. But blade steel is a preference, so whatever you like is fine. The frame is going to be a single piece of titanium, and the weight's going to vary slightly depending on a number of factors. This is probably, in fact, this is definitely the heaviest version of this knife, because these inlays are zirconium, a chalky zirconium, which some people, they're, oh, I wish they polished it. Yeah, that'd be cool, but I mean, as somebody who owns multiple polished zirconium framed knives, God, they are fingerprint magnets, and it just, you're left with such little time to enjoy that finish if you're going to handle and use this stuff, because your hands are all over it all the time. I think the chalky zirconium looks really, really cool, and it just doesn't pick up fingerprints because it's matte, right? So, yeah, I think this is cool. Zirconium is super heavy. They also make a version in, they call it black tie. It's Zircotie, but you just can't call it officially Zircotie. It's like the brand name, right? So it's black titanium Damascus or zirconium infused titanium Damascus. They have micarta. And then they have one with no inlays, with just holes in it, which I think is actually going to be the lightest, given that the holes go all the way through the frame. So I'll weigh this one, but again, just remember, this is definitely the heaviest. So this is 5 ounces. I would venture to guess that the standard titanium with the holes in it probably weighs something like 4 1/4 to 4 1/2. Which isn't bad. I'm kind of surprised this actually weighs 5 ounces. Putting this in my pocket and carrying it around, I immediately adapted to it, and it's the profile of the knife that makes it so easy to carry, right? The pocket clip shape and design is very, very good as well. So my carry experience with this was very easy. If you're a hiker who's min-maxing, obviously it's not going to be for you. Most people are not going to have much of an issue with this. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools as per usual. My tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. This is almost certainly a T8. I have not had to adjust this. I think I've probably flipped this 1,000 times since I got it. That's actually a T10. Wow. So how about these inlay screws? Yeah, those are TI. Now, a lot of people say, oh, they put a screw in the middle. They have ruins. Yeah, I said it. I forgot that there was a screw even there. What they could have done is kind of, grade this thing down or made it black or something like that. Sure. I'm not, inlays that are not screwed in, at least from the other side, I don't like that, because over time, what's holding them in there breaks down and then the inlays come out. That is a problem sometimes. Now they can't do that, at least not very easily with this. Okay, you could get one of those bent like Torx tools. Like it would have to be a very specialized tool to get a screw in underneath, right? So the way that they did this really doesn't bother me. It's gonna bother some people, but I don't really. Seeing a screw here, it doesn't really bother me considering we don't have any handle hardware on this because it's an integral, right? So it's kind of a trade-off. And the screw that's holding in the inlay has nothing to do with disassembly. The access for the pivot is over here. That's what that shield is for. But anyways, the nice thing about an integral is getting into the parts that are, required. Like if you're going to break your knife down, it's just one screw. It's literally just the pivot, which is a T8, nice move. And then you're never going to have to take the lock bar insert screw out. And then you got T8 for the pocket clip. So extremely minimal, and there's nothing to really adjust. You don't have to screw around with anybody who's ever centered a knife, right? You don't have to dick around with adjusting the body screws, adjusting the pivot screw, and doing all that mess. You just blade in, blade out, pivot, and pivot tension. And I can tell you, if it's been like this the whole time since I got it, it's been perfectly centered. It's always going to go back to that unless you severely damage the knife. So very simple process, breaking it down. How about blade stock thickness? These are always a tad thicker than I would expect. See, to me, that looks like maybe 130 thousandths, but I bet you anything it's more than that. This poor thing. Blade stock thickness maximum is, it's 100, well, it's not that much more. It's 140 thousandths, not bad. Let's get into the meat and potatoes here. Boy, I love this. This profile is cool, right? Now, some people are going to look at this and say that it has a ton of personality and that Ray Laconico's designs are iconic and instantly recognizable. Other people will look at this and say it's literally just a long rectangle with another long rectangle and a triangle at the end. Like, how is that unique? And, it's hard to explain. I mean, but I can almost guarantee once you see a Ray Laconico, you kind of start to see a trend and they stick out amidst a lot of designs that kind of, at first glance, look the same, right? How is this ergonomically? It looks kind of uncomfortable. It is. It is kind of uncomfortable. But so this is 100% him just keeping the lines clean. It's not because he doesn't understand that the human hand is not shaped, that something like this has a more ergonomic comfort, a more ergonomic lock-in, I guess. No, it's because he wanted this line to be straight, right? It's not like he was confused and whoops. He wanted this line to be straight. That's part of the design language that we see. Heavy chamfering here makes this much more comfortable than it would have been had he not done that. And also, these are slightly contoured. It's not just flat on top. You can actually see just slight contouring there. Real nice. Real nice. The weirdest spot is holding it like this because you've got your index finger pushed up against this flipper tab, which doesn't have as much curvature as it does on this side. It's much more comfortable to hold it like this. Truthfully, the number of times that I've needed to choke up on this knife is like maybe one. I think I was outside breaking down cardboard boxes. Now there's enough room for your index finger here, but your only indication that you're about to cut your finger is this little pass over the sharpening choil. It's not like Spyderco, where you have a very obvious, like, this is the end of the area where my finger needs to be, right? It's much easier to slip on something like this. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to put your finger up there, you really got to be paying attention. I think it's, especially with gloves, right? I've cut myself on accident wearing gloves because I don't have that initial indicator that I'm getting close. It just cuts through the glove. That's pretty circumstantial, right? Pay attention to what you're doing and it'll minimize the number of accidents. It's just basic logic. Most of the time I'm doing a draw cut, or I'm just holding it like this and cutting open a package real quick. And so while it's not an A+, nowhere near an A+ on ergonomic comfort or anything like that, ergonomic lock-in, in a lot of situations, like hard work situations, this is going to be a really suboptimal thing to hang on to. But it works well enough. And I just appreciate the overall look and feel of it so much that I can kind of choke some of that stuff down. But some of you, it's going to be like, if you prioritize ergonomic comfort over everything, For some of you, that's going to be a deal breaker. So I want to be fair, right? This surface is interesting, right? There's little ovals that are cut out. Instead of the texturing like this, right? It's just like a flat surface, and then the ovals have been cut out of it, which is kind of cool. And it does actually provide some traction, not a lot, but a little bit. It's cool to look at. It's cool to the touch. I love continuous patterns. I think this is really nice to look. It just looks cool. And I think that this version in particular is substantially more interesting than just the plain ones with the holes or the inlays. But that's a nice thing. You can kind of get whatever you want, right? Compound ground, I think he calls this an angry grind. It's compound tanto, hollow up front, and then flat out at the tip. So you got strength and cutting. It cuts really well. I would have preferred this not to be a tanto because over time, I've been using this, right? I mean, I haven't been taking it out and like prying my mower apart with it. That knife doesn't even look used. My knife's got grass clippings and molasses all over. Good for you. I just use my knife like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I do anything crazy with my knives. Cardboard, maybe wood, rubber every now and stuff like that. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a superhero, bushcraft, survive in the wilderness kind of guy. Just cutting stuff, Amazon packages, tape, stuff like that. Crap that'll stick to the blade, and then I wash it off or clean it off, right? Over time, I will need to sharpen this. At my pace, it'll take me a long time. I'll go through touching it up multiple times with a strop without ever having to sharpen it, right? But when that time comes, this area is going to start to look ugly, right? Even if you're a master sharpener, over time, that area is going to start to look ugly, which some people care about, some people don't. I would have just preferred that it was just a continuous belly. But this is what it is, and it does look cool. I'll admit, it does look cooler than a regular, just drop point with the curve to the belly there. I'm sick and tired of belt satin finishes. That's just what we see on everything. It's just such, in my mind, the belt satin finish is like the most basic nothing finish, and it is such a bummer to see a belt satin finish on a knife that looks this good. Riat can do a beautiful high polished tumbled finish. They can also do a beautiful hand rubbed satin finish. They can do a number of different things, right? They've done great coatings before. To me, it was just a shame to see that essentially the only option was a belt satin finish. So yeah, bummer. I think Riat should explore doing some of the newer media blasted stuff like that WE is doing. WE has, for example, an unbelievably gorgeous silver bead blast. That looks amazing, and it shouldn't be like a super duper secret sauce kind of thing. Artisan Cutlery has a sand wash finish that is just absolutely spectacular. Riat seems to just do the plain belt satin finish, and I just think that's such a shame. Because the least interesting part of this knife is not the blade itself, but the finish on it, in contrast to the rest of it, right? So that's my take on that, but that's very subjective. So you can think whatever you want. The blade is done really well, and the cutting bevels are just perfect. That's what we expect from Riat. Yeah, they've done that really well. I like that we just have the Alliance Designs logo on the front. Now, on the other side, there's nothing back here. Laconico, being the classy fella he is, always puts his name on the spine, or at least a lot of the designs that I've seen. And I really like that. Really, legitimately, the only thing that bothers me about the overall aesthetic of this knife is the incredibly basic blade finish. That's it. The rest of this is so cool. I just love the look of it. I'm a huge fan of integrals, and that does absolutely tickle my fancy, right? So if you're like, this guy is celebrating this just because it's an integral, because that's just what he likes. Yup, that's right. I like integrals. I think they're cool. I'm a huge fan. I always get excited. I'm the type of person who will pay more money for an integral version of the same knife, even if there's no real utility. I'm not really gaining anything. A lot of people say all you're doing is paying more money to carry a heavier object. I like that. As a collector enthusiast, somebody who regularly spends money in this territory in the knife world, I like that. I've got 100 and I don't know how many knives that are plenty utilitarian that I can use, and they'll be super optimized for my tasks. But I don't really get a kick out of that anymore. I like some of the more interesting stuff, even if it is, creating a less convenient experience for me day to day. I just like this stuff. I'll pay more for it. You don't have to, but I will. Every part of this just looks spectacular. Edges are nice. I love the one of the most interesting, parts of an integral knife is the spine. What they choose to do with the spine or the butt of the knife, right? Because this is just a big blank area. Normally, there's a backspacer here and some other crap. They didn't waste any effort putting a lanyard hole on it because who cares really, right? We've got heavy jimping back here, and you know what? It looks cool. Honestly, it's kind of the most. I mean, it's the heaviest contrasting area because it's completely different than any other part of the knife, but it looks good. And yeah, sure, tactical reverse grip you can lock in or whatever. I'm not going to use it for that, but I do like how it looks. It's not sharp or anything. Popsicle stick clip actually works really well with Laconico designs because they're pretty. I mean, you just reduce it to the general geometry of the thing. It's just straight lines, right? With one diagonal line out here. So that works. No mounting position for lefties, which is a bummer. We really got to figure out a universal way of including left-handed people. If you're right-handed and you want to complain about that, you don't really have anything to complain about. You don't really have, like, your opinion's not nearly as important as left-handed people, right? That's hard for some people to hear, that their opinion is not as important as somebody else's. But if you're right-handed, I'm just gonna say that to you. I'm just gonna hit you with it hard. Your opinion's not as important, right? Like, so if you're like, left-handed people should just deal with it, that's an opinion that's not really all that important. Left-handed people, yeah, you can flip this over and carry it in your pocket like this. I wouldn't, for a number of reasons, right, that I've outlined many, many times. If you're left-handed, I think you should be able to carry this the same way as right-handed people do. You already have to deal with the fact that it is a right-handed frame lock, right, which isn't that big of a deal, right? We can obviously easily manipulate these things with our left hands, even if we're right-hand dominant. But they should be able to carry it the same way we do. There is a right and wrong way to carry your knife, and the evidence of that is that we see consistently when something is labeled officially as tip up right hand, the pocket clip is in a very specific spot. It's not like it's also tip up left hand. No, that's not being said because that's not the way. There is a right and wrong way to carry this stuff. There's a safe and unsafe way to carry this stuff. Left-handed people, we should have a way to mount the clip. So I really hope that knife companies start figuring out a universal way to do this without, creating some sort of eyesore on the design. I think that's largely the issue, is not wanting to put a filler tab in or something like that. There's plenty of room to have this milled in, having slots on the back to have the clip come up and wrap around while it's still being a milled clip, right? We see that sometimes, but not here, and that's okay. It's a bummer for lefties. Clip retention, good. Carry depth, about right here. I don't have a problem with that. That's medium. Carry depth is fine. Clip length, less than 50%, which is fine with me. It doesn't create any sort of ergonomic hotspot for me. It's just the awkwardness of the handle shape that you're going to notice. Steel lock bar insert. Oh yeah, and in and out of the pocket's great because there's a nice ramp under the clip bill. Steel lock bar insert that doubles as the over travel stop, so that's nice. You can see oh, you know what? No, it's not that. It's the lip of the shield. It's not the lock bar insert. It's the lip of the shield or the pivot access. That's the over travel, but it absolutely does have a stop. So there you go. I do like that pivot shield. I think that looks really nice. And while this top part doesn't follow perfectly that curvature there, I'm kind of glad that they kept it, a symmetrical shape. I think it looks good like that. We have a stop pin that's located in its traditional position. They're shouldering in both positions, really. It's the open position that's the best. It's just the curvature of that will slow down lock face wear over time because it's between the lock face and the pivot, the stop pin, right? The wear on those two areas will determine how far the lock wears over any, a given amount of time. But anyways, traditional stop pin runs on bearings. I feel like that's obvious. No blade play up, down, left, or right. Riot doesn't generally have a problem with that. No lock stick, no double clutch, no pivot lash. Extremely smooth and consistent in here, especially after adding a drop of 10 weight to it. And just an absolutely perfect D10. You don't want that. Really, I don't think I could have tuned this better myself. That is just perfect. And we still have perfect centering with no pivot lash. This is an expensive knife. It's also a knife that's not made for everyone. Especially when we get into this territory in terms of pricing, it's absolutely not meant for everyone. The base price of this knife, titanium with the 3 speed holes, they're just holes, $375. Now that's a lot of money, but I challenge you. Just go right now. Find me another integral knife. Number one, it won't be made in the United States, period. Find me another titanium integral knife with LMAX or the equivalent, S35VN, M390, right, whatever. Find me another one that costs less. Number one, it won't be made in the United States, period. Find me another. It's going to be made in China. Find me another one. It's not going to be easy. Best case scenario, you find, and it has to be available, like actually able to buy right now in 2024. It's going to be really hard. Why? Because that's a super competitive price. In order to, have enough room for them to profit off of it, it has to be kind of an expensive thing. It's very impressive. Now, if you don't care about the integral element, then this isn't for you right away. But you should have known that very early on in the video. If you made it, if it's 30 minutes, my God. Number one, congratulations if you made it this long. Listen to me talk. That's a feat. If you don't like the integral nature, you would have known that a long time ago. And it's not going to be for you. Number two, if ergonomic comfort is absolutely 100% your top priority, that you're not going to like this, right? And number three, if you don't like expensive knives, well, there you go. But if this is a comfort zone for you, this territory, you're familiar with Riot and the quality they put out, you like Laconico's design language, and you're a big fan of integrals, this is like right up your alley, obviously. I do. This was easy. This version of the knife with a zirconium inlay was $465, which honestly I still think is very fair. They had a Damasteel one, and then they had a Zircotite one. For some reason, they didn't do a combination of Zircotite and Damasteel. That would have been a pretty expensive integral. Given that the black zirconium one, or the black Damascus one, was like $655. So you probably would have been looking at an $800 knife. But it's been done before. Honestly, I would have been tempted to do that, right? I don't think those prices, I don't think any of the versions that are available, that the prices are bad. I think the prices are all very, very fair. So, be clear about this. If you like these elements, this is an excellent buy. An excellent buy, and you'll love it. But if you're not specifically interested in these elements, this knife is definitely not for you. I mean, you can get a really awesome knife that's like perfectly catered to what you want as an enthusiast, collector, user, whatever. Any combination of those things. For the same amount of money, you can get like perfectly what you want. But for those who are interested in these elements, this is a wonderful buy, and you'll love it. You'll love carrying it. It's super cool. So this is going to go on my favorite knives playlist, but not my most recommended, if that makes sense. Huge fan of this. Really glad that Tri-State pointed this one out to me. I should have mentioned that in the video, beginning of the video. That's going to be it today, guys. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.